Hey, what's up? I got sucked down this rabbit hole of debugging yesterday. I was going to stream yesterday, and then I got pulled down this crazy debugging rabbit hole of debugging some Python, and then that Python debugging turned into Vim configuration debugging, and that turned into LSP debugging, and it was just a disaster. But now, I think it's better, hopefully. Anyways, I think I've come up with a way to make this text rendering work with text that overlaps. So I'm going to try to implement that right quick. Yeah, essentially since the text rendering requires 2 steps, only one of which is rendering to a texture, and then the second of which is rendering to the screen. It should be possible to, on the first round, render to a texture which doesn't have any overlap, which is what I'm trying to do here. Save those translations. And then in the second step, I should be able to manipulate the inputs to the texture shader so that it places the vertices, or places the fragments to the place where they were before they were translated. Hopefully. That's the hope. It will require doing a for loop, which is generally a no-no in when you're using NumPy data, but I don't think there's any getting around that. There might be some parallel thing you can do. Like, let me see. This is basically what will become a for loop eventually. So maybe what I'd want to do is, if I have the data for these 2 characters stored in an array, then I could compute each of these pieces of data for each element in that array, so I could compute the mins and maxes, the translation, and then I don't know if, yeah, this might be doable. Then update those mins and maxes and the curve data with the translation. Oh, this is actually not possible. Updating the anchor, since the position of the anchor depends on the width of the prior letters, and that I won't be able to know in advance. Unless I could maybe, yeah, I don't think that's parallelizable. I guess I could compute the widths of all of them. This might actually be parallelizable. Aquabeam, what's going on? I saw that you wanted me to change all of the changes to I saw that you wanted me to change all of the changes to the GUI that made it convenient to me. So thanks for that. Okay, so I have these two translations. So I think this rendering step that begins here is pretty different from the positioning that occurs prior. In fact, this program can be moved down quite a bit. It's not used till way down there. Let me put this here. I wonder, maybe I could even just put this in line. Maybe that's kind of janky. I'll just put it, leave it there. So the stencil and fill data, the loop blend data. And doing this positioning, I can place them so there's no overlap. Great. These translations are done in normalized device coordinates, or should be. Yeah, so these are normalized device coordinates. Okay, so let me see if I can pass these to the texture rendering. So I'll need those translations when I come here. What would the API for this look like? I guess it would be the inputs to this, the rendering to the screen. I'll have to have this set of vertices for each letter that's being rendered. Let me actually try this. Just an isolated instance of this. If I don't translate these, this is when they'll render on top of each other. I wonder if I can change this in the texture rendering so that I can move those points. And I don't think that should be terribly difficult. If I just, like here, just add in a translation. If I have this in normalized to device coordinates, so I do something like 0.1, I'll do 0.30. If I were to add this to the GL position of each of the vertices that are out from the vertex state, I think this should just move it to the side, yeah. Although this does have some sort of artifacting, damn. Hold on, stop doing that. Yeah, this does have some artifacting. Is it only coming from the E or the A? Try doing this with only one of them. So I'll come here. This, so I'm creating the vertex coordinates. I'll just have the A. Was the window size also something that was convenient? Yes. Well, yeah, but I think that's something I can change as well. Why would these lines be here? Why would these lines be here? If I'm just reading from a texture. Let's see what happens here. Read this, multiply by 255, check the parity. And if it's odd, I basically make this red, otherwise I throw it out. Which I think makes sense. Pretty sure that's what I want to do. V text. These are the vertices on the texture. I have invert and the tech chords. Wait, so what is V text? Okay, so yeah, these are the texture coordinates. This is going from the lower left corner, the top left corner, and then the upper right corner. Then the opposite. So this is basically making a triangle. They're making a square that's covering the entire texture, but I already knew that. Comment this though. This is the lower right. Maybe anti-aliasing would change this. Maybe it's some sort of rounding error as well. It seems that... I wonder if this happens if I put 0 here. Doesn't happen with 0. But if I did 0.1. That's pretty annoying. I'm not sure that's something I can really debug even. Wonder if this could be done in the fragment shader instead, and if that would make a difference. Invert plus the translation times... Wait, what are the coordinates I pass here? -1, -1, -1, 1, and then 1, 1. So it's the same as this. But it's a screen. I wonder what would happen if I had this translation again. We'll spec 2. We'll do just a little bit to the right. First do that again. And now here, I have the vertices of the texture. I'll move that by the opposite direction. So I'll create a translation here, move it in the other direction. Then I'll sample the texture at that translated point. I think it doubled it. 0.7 can let you make customizable themes. That's pretty nice. Cool, cool. 0.7 can let you make customizable themes. That's pretty nice. Cool, cool. Part of me, I hope we are able to get some more integration with DearPyGui. But I also think moving to Rust will probably mean moving away from DearPyGui. I don't know if there's a good alternative, but at least that's probably not for a long time. Okay, I gotta make this 0. Make this larger. Comma. Yeah, even translating it here causes that artifacting. It seems like almost like it's just a bug or something. Maybe I did some sort of anti-aliasing that would help this. I guess it sort of makes sense that the place where the lines are emanating from is the origin point. I think that makes sense. Try making it 0. I think this will mean... Yes, this will mean it doesn't appear anymore. Let's go back here and I'll try changing that origin. So I need this 0.3 or something. And then I translated one of these. Yeah, so then it's emanating from a different location. Presumably because I moved that origin point. Well, okay. Translating them in the shader is a no-go. Can't have that artifacting. So that kind of sucks. That means maybe I will have to render each of these individually, each of the letters. Which isn't a huge deal, I don't think. But that could potentially have performance ramifications. I'm serious about you. Are you about to move to Rust? Why would it mess with DearPyGui? I'm pretty serious about it in the long term. I think it'll make Manim just a much... Well, there are a few things. It'll make it run way faster if it was running on Rust. And Rust is compatible with WebAssembly, so that'd be another huge win. So there are some really good reasons to do it. And as for messing with DearPyGui, DearPyGui interfaces with Python. And so if everything was Rust, then it wouldn't be able to use it anymore. There might be an IMGUI alternative for Rust, but I haven't looked into it that much. if the mod of the color mod 2 equals 1. Why would it even matter if this was trans? Why would it even matter if this was translated? It must be because the lines that were used to fill it out. Oh, it got really bad in that case. I guess that means they're overlapping? The lines that were used to draw out the shape, I guess, are only valid in one position. Oh well. And I went through a lot of debugging to try to make this work too. Well, if I... Okay, so here's the new plan. The original plan was to render these to a texture where they didn't overlap, and then translate them back while filling them in. Yeah. I guess I could switch from... It should be possible to switch from 2 renders to 3 renders, but I think that'd be too many, since this algorithm requires 2 renders anyway. I already have notes here. First thing I try to do rendering the overlapping triangles to a texture, keep track of, place them without overlap, and move them back into position and into a screen. Fusion 005, what's going on? Have you run through the proposed switch with anyone? It's still in the dome. I've talked about it a little, sort of briefly, but that in particular, it's something I'm fine doing on my own, because I probably end up doing it on my own anyway. So it's not a huge point of concern. Removing the letters, and translating. What's happening today? Well, for the last few streams, I've been working on a text rendering algorithm, which will hopefully replace the text rendering that's currently in the OpenGL version, because our current version has shaders like this. Where is it? Quadratic, Bezier. This and this, which goes on for a while. and this. And so not only are these incompatible with projection matrices, but these are impossible to debug. Nobody on the planet will ever debug these again. So if we're going to do any more complex OpenGL rendering with the letters, we need something that any more complex OpenGL rendering with the letters, we need something that Grant didn't come up with on his own. So that's one thing. Also, it would be compatible with projection matrices, which will make it way easier, which means it won't move in such a strange way. And I actually got it working. The problem, however, is that it doesn't work if text overlaps like this. And so I've been trying to think of a way that I can overcome that. I mean, it's not a deal breaker. For example, I could... there's some stuff to think about. I could just render each one by one. And then, like, these two shapes... in this instance, I'm rendering these two shapes at the same time. So there's one render call. I don't have to do that. What's the new algorithm? Ooh. I have a treat for you. It's basically this. I'll just throw this in the chat. So I could just render every letter with a separate render call. That would fix this. But if you had, like, if you're rendering a ton of letters, it'd be a ton of render calls. Yeah, and I don't think I want to do that. There's a solution I was working on where I would translate them, but unfortunately, that causes some artifacting. So it's really disappointing. So now what I'm thinking of... Okay, so there's a solution 0, which is what I just outlined to you. Render each letter separately. This has a drawback. A new render, a separate render call for each letter, which isn't a game breaker. I mean, if you add 2 different objects, that's 2 different render calls already. The separating text render choice optional. Yeah, it's true. I could actually, like, most of the time, your text doesn't overlap in Manim. It's a sort of unusual thing. What I think I should do is detect, whoops, detect overlaps and use separate render calls if necessary. I think this is the play, because the drawback is just complexity. Will complicate the code. Because then in a case where you have like a string of letters, and then for instance you do a transformation to reverse them so that they end up in reverse order, so they'd all overlap in the middle, then there would be separate render calls except for when they're in the middle. When they overlap in the middle, it'd be, you know, a different render call for each of them. Then when you came back, when it came back and they were separated again, it'll be only one render call. There is another solution, which would be like do an entirely different algorithm. I mean, it should be possible to adapt the algorithm that's already there, but the algorithm Grant came up with is really complex.